Welcome back, boys, and today we are going to be focusing on getting our blob eye further together. Now, I do have some other videos that are planned that are going to be how-to related, so you may see some things later on that kind of overlap what we're doing. But the main focus on this video today is to get the engine back in the car and start getting set up for final assembly. So last video you guys saw, we got the long block all the way together. We got all the leaks taken care of. We did go ahead and install some built cylinder heads on this if you guys are just checking in. It has an IAG stage 2.5 short block. We have some built ported heads on here, some Kelford 199D camshafts, and we have an ETS Rotated Kit, ETS header, 6466 turbocharger, and behind us here you're going to see we have a brand new ETS front mount kit. So as I mentioned, I do have some videos coming up in the future where I'm going to be walking you through on how to install your ETS front mount on multiple different ears, so you guys will be seeing that. Today, as I mentioned, is going to be our main focus of getting this engine back in the car and getting set up. So the first thing that we need to tackle today is go ahead and get this thing on the cherry picker. I got the chain on. This is where I like to grab them, guys. If it has an intake manifold, I would go side to side, but if they don't, then I grab them here, which is right down on the front of the motor there, right down on the back there. Does pretty well at keeping it centered. Now keep in mind, when you have a big heavy turbo over here, it is going to tilt to one side, but not too big of an issue to get in. Last thing we need to dial on this thing for fixing the leak is this rear main. I'm just going to replace it to be safe. Looks like it is still an OEM one, but you can tell it has some dirtiness to it, whether that be clutch or oil seeping. It's just a good idea to replace it while we're there. And then I'll show you guys the clutch we're going to be using on this build as well. Now, in the last video, I teased you guys, obviously showing you that we had ETS parts here. But I want to give a big shout out to my guys over at Extreme Turbo Systems, because they got us fully taken care of on this build. As you can see right away, we got us another set of their ETS V2 headers. And then I have a full ETS rotated turbo kit for this car now. Being that we had that other clapper set up on here that obviously has seen a life, many years, came apart. You guys already knew I wasn't going to end up using that or the turbo that was on it. So here we have it. I asked you guys in the last video to drop down below what you thought the turbocharger was. Obviously, I just gave you a snippet. It is a 6466 next gen, of course, 105 on that exhaust housing there. You guys know I'm a big fan of this turbo, and I told you I wanted a more relatable build. Now, I understand that some of you guys, this is not as relatable, being that it is thought to be a large turbocharger, which obviously it does take a bit more to do a rotated kit. But to be honest with you guys, with starting from ground zero to building your car, whether it be stock location or rotated, the cost really isn't that much different if you're starting from stock. Now, one thing with stock location that makes it easier for most people is most of you already have parts such as a downpipe, you know, if you have an external wastegate, an intake, and so forth, which makes it cheaper because you've already had those. But starting from a stock car and going over to modifying it with either stock location or rotated, a proper setup that will make 500 horsepower rotated is about 1,500 to 2 grand more, and it's really not that much when you think about it. So I do recommend, if you are starting with a stock car, figure out your power goals and then go from there. So here we have it, guys. Like I mentioned, our full ETS rotated turbo kit. You can see the rest of the pieces here. And I mentioned we were getting a brand new ETS front mount. Now, this car already had one on it before, but it was a different setup, obviously, because it had no blow-off valve. It did have a smaller core. I went up to a 4-inch core on this, and Justin needed an ETS front mount, so it worked out. So I just went ahead and went all brand new, make sure everything lines up, bolts up, goes on for what we need. Later on, we're going to go through some of the install on this, but very straightforward, guys, to get your intercooler on the older chassis, meaning 02 to 07. Very straightforward. Now, once we go to 08 plus, there's other things that need to be moved, such as your washer fluid tank that is down here and so forth, which we'll be going into in another video. But the nice thing about ETS, it is a completely off-the-shelf turbo kit that you guys can purchase, and it is very straightforward for install, and I'll be showing you guys how to get some of this stuff installed today. But you guys know that I work with Straight Fabrication as well, which is directly next door to us, which makes it easy for me to do a turbo kit, right? But for the standard person that doesn't have a fabrication shop right next door to them, this is the best route. And ETS has been in the game for as long as I can remember. They've been part of my builds all the way dating back into the early 2014 range, right around there when I first got my 15 STI. So for a lot of you, this is super easy. Just go on there, click of a button, order a turbo kit that fits your car, and bolt it on. it makes sense. Obviously, once we go past sizes and turbochargers, pretty much 6870 is going to be the bigger one that fits on here. They do have a 7270 that it just came out with again, but for the most part, 6870 is the biggest that'll fit on this style of rotated kit. And then later on, you would have to go a custom route. But for the 99% of you guys out there, this kit will fit and work with all your needs. And this 6466 will be great for anywhere from 500 to 900 horsepower, which is a really great, relatable bolt-on turbo kit. But enough talking, let's get this thing on the engine hoist. Let's get that rear main replaced and show you guys what clutch we're gonna be using on this build. For those that have never gone through replacing seals before, this is my trick here. Got a flathead, right? Stick it under edge here, and you can see I already got it going, but it will move, and you can get that underneath, pull the seal out, just like that. Now, I know they make seal puller tools. If you got basic tools, these work best, and you can see this thing adds definitely seeing a life. Now, obviously, that was from me there, but this thing is definitely old. Now we got that seal out, time to replace it. Obviously, OEM, there's the part number if you want it. And none other than the company 23 tool. This thing makes it super easy to replace these rear main seals, guys. Just bolts in, gets your seal all nice and flush, and you're done. So I'm gonna get this thing installed, show you guys what it looks like when we're all done. There we have it. New OEM seal is all installed. One thing to note, guys, put a little bit of lube on the inner side of the seal. As you can tell, I have some there. That's all done. Now we're ready to get this clutch. Which, when it comes to the clutch, none other than the ACT Mod Twin, guys. This clutch has proved to be the nicest driving multi-disc clutch that I have driven, and I'm really curious to see how this thing holds up with some of the stuff I'm going to be doing with this car, which does mean sidestepping, drifting around, so forth, just to kind of give you guys an insight. We've used these a little bit in drag racing before, so I'm curious to see how well it holds up with the heat on that side of things. Normally we'll use the Exetti triple disc, which obviously hold up really well. That's what they're designed for. They still do drive really good, but these do drive a little bit better. So let's get this thing pulled out of the box, get this thing installed, and we are ready to get our engine back in the car. Before I get this installed, those of you that are wondering if this clutch is right for you, to be honest with you, anywhere from an aftermarket clutch standpoint, even if you're looking at doing 400 horsepower, this clutch drives nicer than ACT Street, in my opinion, which utilizes obviously their pressure plate, their disc, and then I like to use OEM flywheels for anything when it comes to Subaru base. Now, obviously, this comes with its own flywheel, so that's a different story, but this clutch is on the more expensive side, so obviously if you're going to be 500 wheel or less, an ACT Street clutch will work fine for you. But if you do plan on launching the car or drifting around, there's a chance that that clutch is not going to hold up the longest life. So if you're trying to play around in your car or you plan on doing any kind of drag racing, this would be the clutch upgrade I would tell you to go to, especially when we're talking 500 plus horsepower. This clutch we've used even all the way up into Rodney, our 1200 plus horsepower Forester that you guys have seen on the channel, and it's held up great. There we got it. We got our clutch all on. One thing to note, when you take this thing out of the box, I don't see any paint marks on here for it to be balanced. I just like to mark it no matter what. So you'll see I have a mark there to the flywheel. That way it's in the same exact spot that they had it when they bolted it together. Just a good idea, precaution to go through. You guys will see I use this company 23 tool to lock the flywheel. This thing is super handy, especially when you're working by yourself. No more sticking a flathead over here to hold the flywheel or getting creative. This works great. So time to get this motor back in the car, and it has been less than a week, and this thing is definitely going through transformation. Excited to see it all come together. All right, now that we're past getting the engine in the car, it is time to get to the key part of this video, and I'm going to show you guys a direct walkthrough on how to put this ETS rotated kit on your guys' Subaru. Now, if you're just starting out and you're starting to do aftermarket parts, I know it becomes difficult to have the mindset or the outlook that it needs to put the aftermarket parts on. ETS is a phenomenal company. Most of you that know do have their parts already know they don't come with instructions for liability reasons, but I'm going to go ahead and give you a direct walkthrough. That way, when you do put this type of turbo kit on your car, or you are putting this turbo kit on your car, you guys have an idea of where to start and where to begin and what things look like if you've never done this before, or you want to see what my outlook is. So here we are. Motor is in the car. As you can tell, it's still apart. I like putting them in without the intake manifold, so that way I can get everything set up. It makes it honestly a lot easier, especially when we're dealing with a rotate kit and getting that set up. So I put it in with header and up pipe on. The header to the up pipe, I just had them snugged, and then once I got it in, I loosened them up. That way these bolts here for this bracket can go in really easily, and then I'll retighten up the header. As you can see there for the bracket, it goes on the inside. Trying to get a good view. Goes on the inside over here of the up pipe bracket, and then you would snug those up, retighten your up pipe down there, and then that portion is done. Now moving up, it is really nice with the newer technology of V-bands, but the downfall of V-bands is there's so many different configurations things can go that it makes it a little bit tough when you're trying to line up 3, 4, or 5 different V-bands. This kit is all V-band, up pipe, down pipe, and obviously our wastegate is also V-band, and it mounts to the down pipe is why I mentioned that. To get all those to line up, guys, my best advice that I can give you is to leave your turbocharger tight enough that it's not going to come off of the up pipe, but loose enough to be able to move it. You can tighten it up just to get a general idea, which you guys can see this is how it should look. And then put your down pipe on. I started with this. So turbo on, put the down pipe on, and once the down pipe's on, then you can start to maneuver things and get them to line up. It does take some time. Don't get too frustrated. Just spend some time on this and everything will line up the way it should. But again, it takes time. Just make sure everything's loose. Make sure your V-bands are fully seated. That is important. So that way when you start your car, it doesn't have a bunch of exhaust leaks, guys. So make sure that they're fully seated. Here you'll see the gate. Now, obviously these fittings are loose here for boost control. I will route those when it comes time. But generally it's going to be something like that. And then you guys can see here the outlook of it. This is obviously oriented towards 02 to 07 chassis because the turbo kits are drastically different from 08 plus. I would say these are probably a little bit more difficult to put on than the 08 to plus because you guys have seen so many of them at this point, and this being so clocked over, it's just different is all. So got that lined up, got the turbo clocked to how I need it here. This turbo was actually one that they had on the shelf that they hooked me up with, so it wasn't actually clocked. I've done it many other times. Your turbo will come clocked, ready to go, which will make it even easier for you to line up this intercooler pipe. But as you can see here, it comes out. I had this nice grommet that I put in here to isolate this pipe from touching the metal. It's something good that I would recommend to put in here to protect it. So as you guys can see, that rubber's in there and protects it. Pipe comes out, goes down to our intercooler. Obviously we come over here, intercooler pipe comes up and in front of the engine. This is why this pipe should go on after the motor's in, because as you can see, it will not come out with it. So this gives you a general idea of how it should look. Now the next steps I'm going to be going into is getting the top of the engine assembled up here. Now there's a lot of different ways to go about this, but there's certain ways that I prefer that work well for me. This older chassis does have some power steering lines that are in the way of this rotated kit. IAG makes a nice kit that is bolt-on for you guys. As you can tell here, this is a rotated line. This is obviously not bolted, so you guys can see it's loose. I've yet to get this tied down, but it just gives you a general idea of where it runs. The other line that goes to the reservoir is tied up nicely down here, away from anything that is going to be heat. You can see I can get my hand in everywhere there, just to give you guys a general idea. Now, once we go over to these aftermarket intake manifold, guys, there's normally a black PCV assembly that runs across on the top of the engine here. Once I go to the aftermarket intake manifolds, I do away with that because the way that it runs up for the breather line to come over here starts to interfere with a lot of the intake manifolds that are out there on the market. So you will have to make your own when it comes to hooking up the breather system. This center breather, the block, connects to the back port on the valve covers on both sides. So you just need to have a T here, run that outward to each side, which I'll show you guys here in a moment. And then once it comes to our coolant system, I'll walk you guys through that with getting the AOS set up. I'm not quite sure where I left off. It's been a couple days. I've had some customer work to do, and I've made some progress on the blob eye build. So I'm going to pick up from here, and I may be overlapping some of the stuff I'd already mentioned, but I'm just going to give a walkthrough before I put the intake manifold on, because that's pretty much one of the only thing that's left for this thing to do its first start. So here we are. I wanted to go through some of the breather system with you guys, and as you can tell, some progress has been made. Some things have been spiraled, and a blue alternator has made its way in here. Also really nice carbon top cover I had just to clean things up a bit. Radiators in, some IAG dress-up parts. I know you guys are going to see it, but breather system on this, you can see I got the AOS there. I made a bracket for it, ran everything behind and down. Reminds me I have one more coolant line actually to hook up on that, so it's a good thing I did this. Breather system, you can tell down here, I got a really nice black billet tee. This is 5/8 hose, runs over to your valve cover back down there. The front hose is 1/2 inch, that runs over to your AOS. That's pretty straightforward for getting that set up. I'm not going to go too far in depth with that, but you can see how I have my harness laid out. I have my fuel lines all the way built. I'm not going to go directly into the fuel lines because everyone has their own opinion on how to run them and how to do them. I've ran them every way you could think of at this point. I have this ran just the way I want to. But here it is, boys. Really good progress on this thing. It is about ready to start up. I'm excited. See how this thing sounds, because we also got an ETS catback on this thing now. They sent one over to us. Check that baby out. That thing looked good. So I'm excited to hear what that thing is going to sound like. And yeah, this thing's pretty close. Just need to get this intake manifold on, hook up one more coolant line for the AOS, and we should be pretty darn close. There she is, boys. Running. Woo.
Life up in the fast lane.